You just got your tech license and you have almost nowhere to put an antenna. What should you do? Tuning an 80-meter end-fed half-wave for all the bands. And what are the requirements for a POTA Rove? This time on Mailbag Monday. What is happening, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to Mailbag Monday. My name is Mike, K at MRD. If you have amateur radio-related questions for me, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. K8MRD@iCloud.com. We've got 3 great topics to talk about today. So let's dive right in. This first one, this viewer says, "Hey, my name is Tony. I just got my tech license and I'm brand new to ham radio. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. But not new to radio. I started off programming Motorola radios, and having been around Motorola for about 3 years, most of my radios are Motorola. Currently in my shack, I have an XPR 4550 for 70 centimeters, but for my antenna, I'm using an NMO tram mag mount with a Comet antenna. But my issue is it's in the utilities closet in my basement, which is near where my shack is located. But the noise from when the HVAC unit kicks on is bad. I posted it in the Ham Radio Crash Course Discord and was wondering if adding about 20 feet to the coax, not sure where the rest of that question was or part of the sentence was going, but my major issue is the mag mount will be sitting at the window down low. Is there any better way to place my antenna or any ideas to help? It is for both DMR on a hotspot and analog for repeaters. I'm just worried about RFI from the unit kicking on, but I'm also really limited to where I can place an antenna. And that last sentence is what we have to focus on. He's very limited where we can place the antenna. So thanks for writing in, Tony. That's my best Italian accent. I feel for you, man. Your antenna is literally in just about the worst place you could ever possibly put it. Now, the antenna you have is the best antenna in the world. So if all you can do is put that antenna in the basement, that sucks, but hopefully we can talk through this. Now, if you can find some way to get the antenna outside, that's going to be exponentially better, but it's going to involve getting the coax outside, which either involves drilling a hole in your house or there are like coax window pass-throughs, but how you're going to do that, I don't know what your basement windows are like, but usually basement windows aren't the greatest for passing coax through. Height is might, and you're underground, so we already have that issue to deal with. If anything, get that antenna as close to a window or outside as possible, and see what you can do. Now, one thing, when I first got licensed, I was using the good old Baofeng UV5R inside my house to hit a repeater that was about 8 miles away line of sight. And one of the very first guys that I talked to, I was hitting the repeater, but every now and again it would go out. So there are kind of RF sweet spots in your house that you could look for, or in your basement. So you might need to kind of move around the antenna, kerchunk the repeater, see if you're hitting it. If you are, leave it there. If not, move the antenna. Or if, a better way to do it is if people are actually transmitting and having a conversation, move the antenna around the room while they're talking and see if there's a place other than in that utility closet where you're going to get a better signal. That's tough. That's really tough. Another thing you could do, though, and this is something that I do at my house right now, because when I'm sitting in my living room and I want to play radio and just listen to the repeaters, I don't get the greatest reception. But you could think about getting a different antenna. This is the Edfong roll-up J-pole. I think these go for $40-$45, something like that. Jason from Ham Radio 2.0 sells these on his website, grapevineamateurradio.com. And these are really darn good. I'll actually just take this, I put this little S-beaner on here, and I'll clip it to the light on my fan, like literally in the middle of my living room, and I'll hook an HT up to it, and I can hit repeaters probably 15 or so miles away with something like this. Or put this in a window or something. There's got to be a better place to put your antenna in your house. Now, obviously, for your hotspot, it doesn't really matter. You could use a dummy load and still get into that. So either move the antenna you have now and do what I suggested about moving it around the room, or possibly look into an antenna like this Ed Fong that might have a little bit more gain to where you can not only transmit to, but also receive from those repeaters that you're trying to hit, and hopefully they're not that far away. So, yeah, again, everyone in the comments is going to say, get your antenna outside. Well, you think if he could get his antenna outside, he probably would. Or maybe you didn't think about that. If you can, get your antenna outside and get it up as high as you can. But other than that, that's going to be a lot of experimenting. But where there's a will, there's a way. A little hamgenuity never hurts. So hopefully you can get it out of the utility closet and find a better place for it. So good luck to you, and thanks for writing in. Next, we've got a question about antennas. Imagine that. This viewer writes, I have a question about tuning an end-fed half-wave. I'm using the MFJ 1982 MP. This antenna serves me very well just about everywhere I want to talk. However, 75-80 meters is a real pain. It tunes better between 3.6 and 3.8 megahertz, all less than 2.1, as opposed to 3.8 to 4, usually between 2.1 and 4.3. Geez. My target's around 3.880. How can I tune 75-80 meters without totally jacking up everything else? Thanks for the help and love the channel. Well, so the good news is your antenna is too long for where you want to operate on 80 meters. So you'll have to do a little bit of experimenting, but here I have just a length of wire, and let's show the kids at home your antenna real quick. This is what he's got going on. It's just a transformer and some wire, and it does have the little wrap of stuff there to kind of sweeten it up on the higher frequencies there. And I actually had the low-power version of this antenna that I reviewed years and years ago. I don't think I have it anymore, but I remember it was quite a good antenna, in fact. So let's just say here I've got some wire and a little dog bone insulator just to kind of illustrate what's going on here. So right now, your antenna is resonant kind of in the lower portion of 80, and at the end of it, you've got the insulator and the wire. So we need to shorten it. Now, we don't have to cut anything, and I would not cut anything while you're doing this. So take that insulator part down, and I think it's just kind of snaked through some holes there. So you can take that out and just pull more wire through. You'll probably need to do a couple feet at least. And with some zip ties or something, put a little zip tie here and just kind of tidy up the wire, if you will. If you want to just twist it a bunch of times on itself, you can do that. I would start with a couple feet and go back and, put the antenna back up, go take your SWR measurements and everything. And that is going to raise the resonant frequency on 80 meters. Now, it is also going to affect every single other band, but that's kind of the compromise that you're going to need to make if you want to get on 3880. So it will raise the frequency, but depending on where you're resonant on, it might be resonant at the bottom of 40. Maybe it'll bring it up 100 kilohertz or so, and again on every other band. So you may actually need to use your tuner on some of the higher frequencies that you might not had to before. That's just kind of the compromise that we're going to make with a multi-band end-fed half-wave. For example, the end-fed half-waves that I have here at the house are both cut for 80 meters. I know they're a little long, and I do need to use a tuner on the higher portion of 80 meters if I'm ever down there, but usually I'm like on FT8 if I'm on 80 meters. But like a lot of my higher frequencies are just nice, like a nice MLT when the mutton is nice and lean. So you're gonna have to play around with it a little bit and kind of find that sweet spot where even if you can tune it up enough by shortening the wire to where the internal tuner in your radio will tune it on 80 meters, but you still have acceptable SWR on the higher frequencies, that might kind of be what you have to do. So hopefully that helps, and you shouldn't have to cut anything. Love it. Thanks for writing in, and good luck to you. Lastly, we have a question about POTA roving. This viewer says, hey Mike, I have a quick question for you. I have done a POTA rove under the old POTA system, and I've done the new system 5-park rove. I retire in a month, and we're planning to do some traveling, and my wife is an extra class as well and enjoys POTA. That's great. The question I have is, under the old system, there were guidelines for distances that had to be met in order to qualify for the award, and they were different depending on whether you were driving or walking, for example. I've looked at all the POTA documentation, and I don't seem to see this listed anymore. Are there requirements still? Also, how do you handle a twofer on a Rove? Does it count as only one park toward the Rove award, even though you activated both parks? I can't believe that I have to stoop to asking a Michigan fan this, but you do have some POTA street cred, and you were at least wise enough to move to Texas. Thanks, Jeff, KE8OUO. And I added this part. He is in Nashville, Ohio. So, Jeff, before I answer your question, you drew first blood, not me, with that silly jab at the end there. And I'd like to point out to the viewers that this viewer is from Ohio. Now, if you don't live in Ohio or Michigan, let me mansplain something to you. We don't like each other. Ohio is pissed because Michigan is the better state, and they do silly things like this. So I'd like to point out the poor grammar in Jeff's, well, I would call this a question, but this is just a paragraph, as there is nary a question mark in your entire statement. So let this reflect the Ohio school system, or the lack of education given to those people who go to school in Ohio, including that little school in Columbus that they like to talk about a lot. It's Ohio State something or other that nobody cares about. So, Jeff, I wish you went to school in Michigan. I went to a blue ribbon exemplary school, and you did not. So this is all in good fun, but we do hate Ohio. See what you get, Jeff. So to answer your question, in the early stages of Parks on the Air, there was what was called the Radar Award, which stood for Rapid Deployment Amateur Radio. And yes, you had to fill out a form saying what parks you went to, whether you drove, walked, or some other mode, like a bike or something, some other mode of transportation. There were different distances that you needed to travel. So, for example, if you were traveling by car, it might have had to been like 5 kilometers away was the next park or something like this. And I actually did one of these years ago. I filled out the form in parksontheair.com. This is before POTA.app. And it appears that all of that is gone. I had an award. It is gone. It is no longer in Parks on the Air for Radar. But here we see on parksontheair.com, this is just the main page here, and I clicked under awards. If we scroll down here, we will get to this POTA Rover Award. And we can see that it was inspired, so maybe this guy was from Ohio too, by South African operator ZS6BNE Eddie Layton for his Radar Award challenge. So in POTA, we do what is called a Rove, and here's the bits and pieces. Here's the rules right here. POTA Rover is a series of awards for activating certain numbers of unique parks in a single UTC day. Has nothing to do with distance. It solely has to do with activating a certain number of parts, anywhere between 5 and 30. So, like I've done these, they're fun. You go out and you activate a bunch of parks in a day. So if you're at a twofer or a threefer, that would still count as 2 parks or 3 parks or whatever. So technically, if one of the parks is a twofer on your list, you only need to hit 4 really, because you're getting 2 birds stoned at once with that other one, and you will get this Rover Warthog or Rhino or Cheetah or Ostrich or Leopard or Lion Award. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that you have a lot of fun with your wife, and I hope that you will learn where the question mark key is and how to form a proper question. But thanks so much for writing in, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And guys, if you have questions for me, shoot me an email at k8mrd@icloud.com. My name is Mike, KMRD. This is Ham Radio Tube. We'll see you next time. 73.